Most people walk through life believing they see the world exactly as it is. They assume they're being realistic, objective, maybe even rational. But psychology suggests something far stranger. You don't see the world the way the world is. You see it the way your deepest assumptions quietly shape it. There is a layer underneath your personality, underneath your mindset, underneath all the opinions you think you chose for yourself. A layer so old and so invisible that you've never questioned it, because you never realized it was there. Psychologists call this layer your primal world beliefs, or simply your primals. These are the fundamental assumptions your mind makes about the nature of reality itself. And the research shows that every one of us carries one of three core worldviews. We carry assumptions about whether the world is safe or dangerous, whether it's enticing or dull, and whether it's alive or mechanistic. These aren't conscious beliefs. They aren't philosophical positions you've thought through. They are closer to atmospheric beliefs background, settings that your brain uses to make sense of everything you experience. And here's the surprising part. Your entire life bends around whichever primal worldview you carry. Your relationships, your ambitions, your stress levels, your creativity, the risks you're willing to take, the level of joy or anxiety you feel every day, all of it is shaped by the answer your mind gives to one hidden question. What kind of world am I living in? Most people never ask that question consciously, but their childhood definitely answered it for them. In 2019, psychologist Clifton and his team published a groundbreaking study exploring whether there are deep, universal assumptions beneath all personality traits, values, and worldviews. Their conclusion was that these primal beliefs not only exist, but they strongly predict how someone behaves, how they cope, and even how well they thrive. People who see the world as safe and enticing tend to flourish. They take risks, form deeper relationships, show more resilience, and recover from setbacks faster. People who see the world as dangerous or dull tend to shrink away from opportunities, protect themselves more, and feel more anxiety and pessimism. And the key discovery wasn't just that these beliefs mattered, but that they were formed extremely early in life, long before you had language for them, long before you could question anything. They were shaped by the emotional atmosphere you grew up in, how often life felt predictable or chaotic, how adults around you responded to uncertainty, how often things went wrong or right. Once these beliefs form, they sit deep beneath conscious awareness. Two people can face the same situation and come away with completely different interpretations. One person sees opportunity, the other sees a threat. Neither one is necessarily wrong. They're just wearing different lenses. In this video, we're going to explore those lenses in depth, where they come from, how they silently shape the way you interpret everything, and how you can begin to shift them if the worldview you inherited is holding you back. Because once you understand your primal world beliefs, your entire life starts to make more sense. Before you ever formed memories, before you ever learned your name, and long before you could speak, your nervous system was already studying the world. Not in the way a scientist studies something, but the way a small animal quietly absorbs patterns. Your brain was asking questions you didn't know existed yet. Questions like, is life predictable? Are people consistent? Do good things last? Do bad things pass? Does the world respond to me? Does it care? Does it hurt? And every gesture, every tone of voice, every small moment of chaos or comfort was an answer. Across thousands of these early experiences, your mind formed a conclusion. That conclusion eventually crystallized into what psychologists now call a primal worldview. The researchers behind the 2019 study, Clifton and his colleagues, found that these worldviews aren't intellectual positions. They're pre-logical. They come from the body first, from experience second, and only much later do we try to justify them with thoughts. In other words, you didn't choose your primal worldview. It happened to you. It was built before you had the ability to question. Imagine two children growing up in two very different emotional climates. One child grows up in a home where adults are stable, predictable, and respond with warmth. The world doesn't feel perfect, but it feels navigable, safe enough. When something goes wrong, it's repaired. When uncertainty appears, it's handled. This child's nervous system starts to assume that the world itself behaves roughly the same way. Not perfectly, not magically, but generally safe, generally workable, generally open to engagement. That another child grows up in an atmosphere of unpredictability. Maybe there's shouting. Maybe there's emotional inconsistency. Or maybe there's simply no emotional responsiveness at all. In this child's experience, good moments can shatter instantly. Calm can explode into chaos. Or needs can go unnoticed. That child's nervous system learns a different rule. The world is unreliable, unresponsive, or even threatening. Life becomes something to brace against. Neither child chooses these beliefs. They inherit them through lived patterns. Clifton's research shows that most adults carry a stable version of one of these early formed beliefs into the rest of their lives. People with a safe, primal belief tend to expect things to work out. People with a dangerous primal belief brace for things to go wrong. People who see the world as enticing tend to explore, pursue, create. People who see the world as dull expect disappointment and may not even try. And people who see the world as alive feel a sense of connection and meaning, while those who see the world as mechanistic feel detached, disconnected, or alone. These aren't abstract categories. They show up in the smallest decisions. A safe world person sends the message. A dangerous world person rehearses it 10 times and still hesitates. An enticing world person moves to another city for an opportunity. A dull world person assumes it won't change anything. An alive world person feels guided by something larger. A mechanistic world person feels like everything is just random physics. What makes primal beliefs so powerful is that they become self-fulfilling. If you expect danger, you notice danger. If you expect possibility, you notice possibility. The world isn't changing. Your lens is changing what you see. And the strangest part is this: your primal worldview is probably older than your earliest memory. It's a silent rulebook that has been at work your entire life. It tells you how much to trust people, how much to risk, how deeply to love, how boldly to live. You've been using this internal map without knowing that someone else, your childhood, drew it for you. But here's the part most people never realize. These beliefs feel like just reality. They don't feel like beliefs at all. They feel like common sense. They feel like truth. That's why people rarely question them. They don't see a worldview. They see the way things are. In the next block, we'll look directly at the first major primal belief, safe versus dangerous, and how dramatically it shapes your identity, your relationships, and your decision-making without ever announcing its presence. Because once you understand this first primal belief, you start recognizing patterns in your life you never even knew you had. Every person alive walks around with an invisible assumption about the world, that it is either mostly safe or mostly dangerous. Not perfectly safe or perfectly dangerous, but leaning one way in a way that feels natural, obvious, unquestionable. And this single primal belief shapes almost everything: your behavior, your relationships, your ambitions, and even how your body responds to uncertainty. In Clifton's research, safe versus dangerous is the master belief. It is the foundation on which many other beliefs are built. If you believe the world is basically safe, you move through life with a quiet ease. You don't expect catastrophe around every corner. You don't constantly brace for disappointment. When something unexpected happens, your first reaction isn't panic, it's curiosity. And this isn't because you're naive. It's because your nervous system has learned that danger is the exception. not the rule. But if you believe the world is mostly dangerous, your body lives in a state of readiness. Even when nothing is wrong, you anticipate that something could go wrong. You don't fully relax, you don't fully trust. And every moment of calm feels temporary, like standing on thin ice waiting to hear the crack beneath your feet. Both people think they're just being realistic. Neither thinks they're holding a belief. This primal assumption doesn't only show up in big moments. Like major life decisions, it shows up everywhere. Someone with a safe world belief interprets a stranger's expression as neutral or friendly. Someone with a dangerous world belief interprets the same expression as threatening or dismissive. A safe world person reads an unanswered text as they're probably busy. A dangerous world person reads it as I said something wrong. Or they're losing interest, or this is about to blow up. The world stays the same. The interpretation changes everything. People with a safe world belief tend to take opportunities. They apply for jobs they aren't fully qualified for. They start projects without overthinking. They trust their ability to handle the unknown. Meanwhile, people with a dangerous world belief tend to stay where things feel controlled. They avoid risks not because they lack ambition, but because their nervous system whispers the same message over and over. If you step into uncertainty, something bad will happen. This belief even shapes relationships. Safe world people tend to expect stability. They assume others mean well unless proven otherwise. Dangerous world people assume harm until proven otherwise. So the exact same relationship behaviors, silence, conflict, differences create radically different emotional experiences depending on the worldview they are filtered through. And here's the part most people never realize. This belief shapes your identity. If you see the world as safe, you are more likely to see yourself as capable, resourceful, resilient. It feels possible to build things, to change things, to take responsibility. But if you see the world as dangerous, you are more likely to see yourself as vulnerable, fragile, on edge. You don't just see danger out there. You feel it inside yourself. But what truly makes this primal belief powerful is how deeply it hides. People rarely declare the world is dangerous. They just say things like, "That'll probably go wrong," or "You can't trust anyone," or "Life is harsh." These aren't facts, they're summaries of their own worldview. In the paper by Clifton and his team, one striking finding was this: people with a safe world belief aren't necessarily lucky, wealthy, or protected. Many came from ordinary households. Some even came from adversity. And yet, somewhere in their early development, they experienced enough reliability, enough responsiveness, enough repair to conclude that the world wasn't out to get them. Likewise, many people with a dangerous world belief weren't harmed by dramatic events. They were shaped by subtler patterns, emotional inconsistency, caregivers who were overwhelmed, environments that felt unstable. It doesn't take a catastrophe to build a dangerous worldview. It only takes repeated unpredictability. So the question isn't, was your childhood good or bad? The question is, what did your childhood train your nervous system to expect? In the next block, we're going to explore the second primal belief, enticing versus dull. This one doesn't shape how safe you feel in the world. It shapes how drawn you feel to it. Your sense of possibility, excitement, creativity, desire. It is the difference between waking up curious about life or waking up emotionally numb to it. If the first primal belief decides whether the world feels safe enough to approach, the second decides whether it's even worth approaching in the first place. This belief, enticing versus dull, shapes the emotional texture of your life. It determines whether the world feels rich, stimulating, full of possibility, or flat, repetitive, predictable, and uninteresting. If safe versus dangerous is about survival, enticing versus dull is about desire. Some people walk through life with a subtle sense of fascination. Small things catch their attention. A conversation becomes an opportunity. A book becomes an adventure. A random idea becomes a spark. Their nervous system is tuned to notice beauty, opportunity, novelty. Nothing feels empty or pointless. Everything holds potential. Others walk through life feeling like everything is the same. Days blur together. Conversations feel predictable. New experiences feel like chores. They aren't necessarily depressed. They're just living in a world that doesn't feel alive to them. It feels dull. As if the world is static and nothing new is ever truly happening. The research on primals reveals something important. This belief isn't simply about personality. It's not just introversion or boredom or low motivation. It's a foundational worldview. It shapes how much life pulls you forward. A person who views the world as enticing tends to take initiative. They reach out, they try new things, they explore. They create, they experiment. Life feels like it has layers, possibilities, pathways. Even their failures feel less final, because curiosity remains alive beneath the setbacks. A person who views the world as dull withdraws not out of fear, but out of emptiness. Why try something new if it all feels the same? Why explore if nothing feels worth exploring? This worldview creates a quiet emotional flattening. It turns life from a landscape of possibilities into a hallway of repetitions. And just like the other primals, this belief is learned early. Children naturally explore. Curiosity is built into human development. But curiosity is fragile. It needs encouragement, responsiveness, stimulation. If a child grows up in an environment where exploration is met with support, interest, or shared excitement, the world feels like a place worth engaging with. Their curiosity becomes fuel. But if exploration is met with neglect, indifference, or constant interruption, the world feels like it has nothing to offer. A child learns, nothing out there matters. And this belief follows them into adulthood. One of the most striking parts of Clifton's research is how strongly this belief predicts thriving. It connects to creativity, motivation, passion, play, ambition, even romantic attraction. People who believe the world is enticing tend to build richer lives not because of luck, but because they keep leaning forward mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Meanwhile, those with a dull world belief often interpret their own lack of desire as a personal flaw. What's wrong with me? Why don't I feel excited? Why doesn't anything feel meaningful? But this isn't a character defect. It's a worldview, one that can be shifted. Culture also plays a role. In some families, excitement is encouraged. Curiosity is valued. Wonder is protected. In others, practicality dominates. Emotions are muted. Exploration is discouraged. Passion is labeled as impractical. Over time, the world becomes something to manage, not something to marvel at. But here's the deeper truth. You can't force yourself to believe the world is enticing. You don't wake up one morning and decide, today I will find life exciting. It doesn't work that way. This belief changes slowly, through repeated experiences that contradict the old worldview, through exploration that doesn't end in disappointment, through moments of discovery, connection, inspiration, moments that slowly widen the emotional aperture. And this is why the primals are so powerful. They explain not just your thoughts, but the tone of your existence. A safe world belief answers the question, is it okay to approach? An enticing world belief answers the question, is it worth approaching? In the next block, we'll explore the third primal belief, alive versus mechanistic. This one determines whether the world feels meaningful or meaningless, whether life feels like a story or a machine. It's the belief that shapes purpose, spirituality, symbolism, synchronicity, everything that gives depth to the human experience. There is one more primal belief, one that sits deeper than safety, deeper than desire, and shapes the spiritual, emotional, and existential layer of your life. It's the belief researchers call alive versus mechanistic. And it answers a question that most people never articulate, yet feel every day. Is the world responsive, meaningful, interconnected, or is it cold, indifferent, and mechanical? Some people walk through life with a sense that the world has a pulse, not in a mystical or religious sense, but in a way that makes life feel rich with meaning. Patterns feel significant. Moments feel connected. Life doesn't just happen, it unfolds. These people often describe a sense of synchronicity, intuition, alignment. They don't feel like they're drifting through random events. They feel like they're interacting with a living system. Others walk through life feeling like everything is simply physics. Particles colliding, randomness, equations. The world doesn't care, because the world can't care. Things happen. And that's it. No deeper meaning, no hidden connections, no larger story. Life is a machine, not a conversation. Neither worldview is inherently right or wrong. But they create dramatically different emotional realities. A person with an alive world belief tends to perceive meaning everywhere. A chance encounter becomes important. A failure becomes a message. A coincidence becomes a signpost. These interpretations give them a sense of direction and purpose. Life feels guided, not necessarily by a supernatural force, but by a coherence, a pattern, an unfolding logic. They feel connected to something bigger, even if they can't fully name it. A person with a mechanistic world belief feels grounded, practical, rational, but they may also feel disconnected. They might struggle with purpose because nothing feels like it has inherent meaning. Everything must be justified logically, and even then, it may feel arbitrary. Life becomes something to figure out, not something to participate in. This primal belief influences more than spirituality or philosophy. It shapes resilience. People with an alive world belief often find it easier to recover from setbacks because they interpret challenges as part of a larger process. They tell themselves, this happened for a reason, or there's something to learn here. Meanwhile, people with a mechanistic worldview often interpret setbacks as random misfortune. And random misfortune is harder to metabolize. It offers no direction, no narrative, no deeper place to stand. That doesn't mean alive world people are naive or magical thinkers. Many scientists, artists, entrepreneurs, and thinkers operate with an alive world worldview not because they reject logic, but because they intuitively sense that meaning is real. They feel that the world communicates through patterns, and that those patterns help them navigate life. Just like the other primals. This belief forms early. It often begins with caretakers who mirror a child's emotions, respond to them, and make them feel felt. When a child's inner world is acknowledged, they internalize the sense that the outer world is responsive too. That it reflects them, that it interacts with them. This doesn't mean they grow up believing the universe is magical. It means they grew up feeling seen. And that feeling becomes a worldview. But when a child's emotions go ignored or dismissed, the world feels unmoved by their presence. It feels indifferent. They learn that nothing responds. Nothing resonates. Their inner world and the outer world feel disconnected. And so, in adulthood, life feels like machinery rather than relationship. This belief also shapes how people interpret uncertainty. Someone with an alive world belief sees the unknown as part of the story, part of something unfolding. Someone with a mechanistic world belief sees uncertainty as random chaos, unpredictable, unmeaningful, and emotionally flat. And because this belief is so deeply tied to meaning, it influences the kinds of goals people set. An alive world person tends to choose goals that feel aligned, expressive, purpose-driven. A mechanistic world person tends to choose goals that feel logical, practical, or externally rewarded. One approach isn't better than the other, but they create different forms of fulfillment. The fascinating part is that this belief also becomes self-reinforcing. If you believe the world is alive with meaning, you notice meaningful events. If you believe the world is mechanical, you notice randomness and disregard anything that looks like significance. Your worldview becomes your evidence. But the truth is, humans have always sought meaning. It's built into us. And the primal belief of alive versus mechanistic may be the clearest psychological explanation for why some people feel spiritually connected, even without religion, and why others feel spiritually flat even if they practice a belief system. This third primal doesn't just shape how you think about life. It shapes how you feel inside your own existence. In the final block, we're going to bring everything together. Because once you understand how these three primal beliefs work, the real question becomes, can you change them? Can you shift them? Worldview you inherited? Can you reteach your nervous system to see the world differently? And the answer is yes. Once you understand these three primal beliefs, safe versus dangerous, enticing versus dull, alive versus mechanistic, you might start seeing your own worldview more clearly. You might even recognize the invisible rules you've been living under your entire life. But that leads to the real question: can these beliefs change? Or are you permanently locked into the worldview your childhood handed you? For a long time, psychologists believed these deep assumptions were fixed. If they formed in early development, they must be permanent. But the research on primals has revealed something far more hopeful. These beliefs can shift, not quickly, not with a single affirmation or mindset trick, but they can evolve over time when your nervous system is exposed to repeated experiences that contradict the old worldview. Human beings rewrite their beliefs through evidence, not through wishes. If you grew up believing the world is dangerous, for example, you can't force yourself to feel safe, but you can have enough experiences of stability, reliability, repair, and connection that your nervous system starts building a new pattern. Slowly, the world is dangerous belief becomes less rigid. You begin to approach situations instead of avoiding them. You start expecting things to go okay, not because you're forcing optimism, but because your body has learned a new rule. The same is true for the enticing world belief. You can't wake up and command life to feel interesting, but you can begin to expose yourself to experiences that introduce novelty, inspiration, or curiosity in small, manageable doses. You can follow your interests where they naturally pull you, even if that pull is faint. Curiosity grows through being fed, not through being demanded. And the alive world belief? It shifts through connection, emotional, relational, experiential. When you start paying attention to meaning, when you slow down enough to notice patterns, when you treat your emotional world as something worthy of listening to, the world outside begins to feel more responsive. This isn't about adopting a belief system. It's about allowing the possibility that life might be more than random machinery. But here is the most important part. Primal beliefs don't change through thinking. They change through living. Through repeated experiences that whisper a different truth. Through relationships that feel safe. Through goals that bring curiosity. Through moments of meaning that make you pause. When people shift their primals, they often describe it the same way. My life didn't change first. My way of seeing life changed first. And once that happens, everything else follows. Risks feel less threatening. Opportunities feel more inviting. Meaning feels more accessible. Your entire emotional landscape shifts because the lens you're looking through is no longer distorting everything toward fear, apathy, or emptiness. This is the heart of primal world beliefs. They explain why two people can live in the same world, but experience entirely different realities. They explain why some people thrive despite hardship, and others struggle despite opportunity. Not because of luck or intelligence, but because of the worldview their nervous system inherited. And now that you understand these lenses, you have a choice. Not to instantly replace them, Not to magically erase them, but to begin noticing them, to question them, to gently test them, to invite new experiences that show your mind a different way of interpreting reality. Because once you become aware of your primal beliefs, you are no longer ruled by them. You can begin to reshape the world you see. You can begin to step into a version of reality that feels more open, more meaningful, more alive. And when your world shifts even slightly, you don't just change your beliefs. You change your life.